we did is Austin got a new airplane last year, A844 X-ray, and it's a turboprop-powered Lancer Evolution. So, of course, you can imagine the next thing that happened is the turboprop model in X-plane just got better and better and better and better because he now had access to a PT6 engine on his own plane and could test it under all kinds of circumstances. So this is why in 1110 you're going to see a massive improvement when it comes to all turboprop powered aircraft like a King Air or a Pilatus, because we now have super accurate data for the PT6 engine. We did a little bit of improvement to the piston-powered aircraft as well, based on Austin's old aircraft. We had a helicopter pilot really help us tune the helicopter model, and we also did a few changes to the turbojet engines, so that we can also do fighter jets that can go supersonic much better. What we also did in the systems code is we updated the cabin pressurization system, mainly based on Austin's experience now flying a pressurized plane and all the things that can go wrong with it. So we have, with this plane, unfortunately, quite a few pressurization failures in real life that were quite spectacular and quite painful on the ears. So we learned from that. X-Plane 11 cannot simulate ear pain yet, but we're working on that. Then another great thing we're doing is you can now fly backwards. Why is that important? Why would you want to fly backwards? Well, of course, helicopter pilots, they want to have the correct behavior when hovering backwards. But imagine you got some wind at the airport, and of course you're going to take off into the wind. But by the time you taxi down parallel to the runway to go to your takeoff position, you got a tailwind, right? So at this point, the air is actually coming over your plane backwards. And what we did in X-Plane 11.10 is we refined the maths for all the air that goes over the wings and the miscellaneous surfaces to work not only from the front but from every direction. So no matter, you can now correctly do maneuvers in X-Plane where you do tail slides, right? So bring the airplane up vertically and let it slide down, fall over the tail. So that is really a big improvement. And what we did at the same time was also improve the prop wash model, because it's really the same thing. When the air that is turned by the propeller moves around the fuselage of the aircraft, it doesn't go straight down. The air is not pushed down by the propeller straight, but it gets a swirl. So the air comes around the aircraft in like this spiraling pattern and then hits the vertical fin, the stabilizer, from one side. So you get a sideways force on the stabilizer from the swirl of the air. And that is exactly what X-Plane also can do correctly now. We did a few improvements to the electrical stuff. That was mainly because I was flying a very old Piper airplane that had a very weak generator, and I noticed turning off at night, turning off from the runway, that my landing lights got brighter and darker with my power setting, right? Because the battery was very weak, the alternator was crap, and it really needed the RPMs to get enough voltage to brighten up the landing light. So I was taxiing down, and every time I throttled up, woo, it went bright, and bring it back and the lights went dim again. So we did kind of the same thing in X-Plane. The electrical system now really works correctly, even for very weak alternators. You get the voltage drop and the lights go dimmer when there's not enough voltage for that. Yeah, something that I have been working on very much over the course of the last year, mainly, is I brought the default avionics To explain 11, of course, we have the GPS for the general aviation aircraft, the 430 and the 530, and we have a generic airliner, FMS, and with explain 1110, we're adding these two. So yeah, with the next update, you get the Garmin 1000 flight deck for general aviation aircraft. We're going to ship the Cessna 172 nav 3 with this glass cockpit, with this digital flight deck, and also the Cirrus Vision Jet. And this is not only for us, but it's also available for third-party developers who make their aircraft. So if they want to build a Baron or a Bonanza with a modern cockpit, they now can do that. So our G1000 is based on the airplane that I have the most experience with, because the problem with the G1000 is there's so many variants out there, because they change the software basically every year. So there's always going to be someone who says, "But on my aircraft it's different. You've done it wrong." And all I can say is, well, it's based on the airplane that.
But the two aren't there a single and twin engine?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Different versions.
Yeah.
That come with X-Plane, so you.
So yeah, as it says here, it's customizable for different aircraft types. So we only make two types, but third-party developers can make many more variants. You can put it in the 2D panel or in the 3D cockpit. You have standalone windows for cockpit builders, so you can open a pop-up window and then make it a native window within Windows or Mac, and then you can drag that window over to a second monitor, or you can put it on a touch screen, or some vendors are selling hardware bezels where you have all the physical knobs and buttons you can push, and for that you can also extract the screen from X-Plane and put it in this kind of hardware bezel. And what I like about it is that it's actually much faster and much smoother than the real one. So yeah, basically that's the PFD you're getting. It supports quite a few failures. So yeah, you can fail the air data computer, you can fail the magnetometer, you can fail the attitude and heading reference system, and it'll display the appropriate failure flags. It does a couple of things that not very many people knew. So for example, a beta tester told me, "Hey, you got a bug there. The horizon is all blows up when I pitch up." And I can tell, well, that's what the real thing does too. So it splits up the horizon in unusual attitudes, and as you can see, it removed quite a few indications that used to be here. So that's kind of the way it wants you to focus on. Hey, get your nose down. You're 50 degrees up. That's where you need to go. Yeah, as I said, several variants. So these are the configurations that it comes in. You can make a Cessna 172 or 182 with a constant speed propeller. You can display various stuff like you have a fuel totalizer, very useful because in real life fuel gauges are terrible. They are never accurate. Fuel gauges in Cessnas are total crap. That's why you want to use the fuel totalizer instead. You can have a turbocharged aircraft at the turbocharger to it. You can make a turboprop. So this is the indication you would get, for example, in a Cessna Caravan or an Evolution, or you can have the twin engine Baron like this. Yeah, this is what I call the nerd slide. About all the navigational features that it has. So it can do basically all the things the airliner FMS can do too. You can go to Navigraph or Aerosoft and get your nav data updates. Then you get all the zits and stars and instrument approaches worldwide. It can do the same kind of new satellite-based augmentation system approaches that the real one can do. It'll give you the correct indications, whether it's LNAV, or whether it's a advisory, or whether it's based on regular GPS, or whether it's based on WAS, or whether it's based on WAS and WAS altitude. And the reason why I care for this, which many people probably won't really notice, is that I use it as a flight instructor. And I need to tell my students, what kind of approach is this? How does the glide slope behave? What are you expected to do? And what is the minimum you can shoot for on the approach? And many students don't really know what all of this means. And renting an aircraft that costs $200, $250 an hour and fly around and learn all that, that's of course not effective. So I tell them, hey, it's an X-plane, learn what all that stuff does and do it on your computer at home instead of burning $250 an hour on a real aircraft. So that's just a few pictures of what it looks like in action if you put it in the 3D cockpit. Of course, you can do put the weather uplink on here. You can fail it, and then it reconfigures itself to a single screen configuration, or you can fly like I do and bring both. Get that on the right side for the flight instructor. All right, so much for the avionics, and now we come to again stuff that looks nice. So,
just a quick question.
Yeah.
Can you swap out the G1000 to what it currently is? So when you add that, can you swap it out to the new one, or to the one which already is?
Well, right now we don't have a G1000, so I don't really understand the question. Because right now we have the Cessna with steam gauges, and in X-Plane 11.10 you get both versions. You can either fly the round gauge, the steam gauges, or that one.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, one thing we've always tried to do since actually Austin started X-Plane and built the first version is we've always tried to make the flight model and the flight experience as accurate as possible. One thing I think you obviously know from listening to Philip is he's not only a commercial pilot, instrument pilot, and instructor, but a lot of the staff at Laminar are pilots. I'm a commercial pilot. We have Randy Witt, who's one of the co-owners of Laminar, as a pilot. Chris Serio, who does X-Plane Mobile, as a pilot. And Austin, of course, is very experienced, multi-thousand-hour pilot with experience in both prop and turbine. So having the flight model correct, having all of the aerodynamics correctly modeled is something that's always been at the top of our priority list. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the scenery. One thing that we did in X-Plane 11 that's been very, very well received is the AutoGen, which we're very proud of. And it fairly accurately, we like to use the term plausible world. It doesn't give you an exact replica of the cities and the landscape that you're flying over, but it gives you a plausible representation if you fly over a large city or a small city, what it looks like in real life. One thing we did in X-Plane 11 is we started modeling height of buildings. So, for example, if you're flying over Chicago or New York, a city that has a lot of tall buildings, you're going to see the buildings at the correct height and in the correct, roughly the correct geographic place. So Manhattan, for example, actually looks like Manhattan. What we've started doing now is we've started with those particular AutoGen scenery is we've started adding iconic landmarks to about 30 of the large cities. This gives you an idea of some of the new AutoGen that we're working on right now. I don't know, is that in X-Plane already?
Well, we keep adding more variety to
more
it.
Types,
so without actually the need for a scenery author, we keep adding more types of buildings, more types of clutter, like gas stations and supermarkets and warehouses and all that. So the AutoGen gets more diverse with every update.
Right, and we have AutoGen now, as you probably know, in X-Plane 11, that's based on both U.S. scenery, which is pretty much used worldwide, but also European scenery, which is used in Europe. But landmarks. landmarks are something that really polishes out the AutoGen. Because if you're flying over New York, you look out, you say, okay, there's Manhattan, I can see all the skyscrapers, but you don't see the iconic landmarks. You don't see the Statue of Liberty, you don't see the Empire State Building, you don't see the World Trade Center, and you don't see an accurate representation of the bridges that connect Manhattan to the other parts of New York, which are very iconic and very unique. So what we started doing in X-Plane 11 is we have an artist now whose sole job is building landmarks. And just to give you an example, if we go to London, you'll see Parliament Building, you'll see the London Wheel. This is in 1105, isn't it?
No, Las Vegas is the only one that shipped in 1105, and London is coming now with 1110.
Okay, London will then be in 1110. Excuse me. We've got London, and let's just cycle through some.
Well, there's quite a few cities now.
Yeah, there's quite a few.
Doesn't work? All right,
no,
I can do it.
You're going to have to do it here. Okay, so London, I think we've got 4 or 5 screenshots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you see these are very, very highly detailed.
And everything does automatic night lighting as well. All right, do you recognize this city?
Yeah.
I think on the left that gives it away, right?
Gives it away, right. But you can see the intricate detail here on the bridge. It's unbelievable, really. Sydney at night. Another night shot. Day shot.
All right, which city is that? So yeah, that is
We gave the job to one of our developers who's doing some of the airports for us. We told him we wanted to do Las Vegas. He started working, he got the airport done, and then he just kept going. So he started putting in all the strip buildings, and it actually it turned out to be really an impressive piece of work. And we have a little video here we're going to show you. Get through. Okay, Chicago. We've done some of the landmarks in Chicago. These will also be in 1110. The Willis Tower.
CS Tower used to be the tallest building in the world.
Right.
Oh, and as you can see, we are not historically accurate because you can still land in Mays Field. So in real life, the airport is gone. There's a park and buildings there. So in X-Plane, you can still use it for like nostalgia reasons.
Downtown Chicago.
Yeah, with great night lighting, of course, as well. All right, and we got one more city.
This is Dubai.
Yeah. So we come from Chicago, which used to have the tallest building in the world, and this is what is now the tallest building in the world. Burj Khalifa. Yeah.
Is that how it's pronounced, Khalifa?
I don't know. I hope so. I think so. All right. So it's actually so tall you can actually stick it up through the clouds. Yeah.
Notice the lighting here as the sun is setting on the glass.
So this is not a texture. This is what I've been talking about materials, glass, metal, just looking right depending on where the sun is and where the light comes from. Yeah, that's the X-Plane scenery engine just does that.
And it does it really without any hit to the frame rate, correct?
Yeah. All right, Marty, the video.
The video. Okay, this is the one. baggage carts, airport vehicles.
Yeah, there you go. Tanker, pushback trucks.
It just gives some credit here to Thomas Rasmussen, who some of you may have heard of. He's a very prolific X-Plane YouTube video producer, and he produced this for us. But again, this is in X-Plane 1105. It's not an add-on. It comes with the product, and we're going to be doing more cities like this where we're putting in the iconic landmarks to make them look more realistic. And let's see.
Virtual reality is next.
Yep, you want to go on?
Yep. All right, so up until now, everything that we showed you is stuff that you can access within the next week, basically. So all we showed you in terms of navigation systems, scenery, objects, autogen, landmarks, all of that you can get your hands on pretty much next week when we start the X-Plane 1110 public beta. We actually rolled out X-Plane 1110 to selected add-on developers already. So everyone who's making add-ons like Jar Design and Flight Factor and Javier Roland and all those guys, they already have that, and we're working with them to make sure the rollout is pretty smooth and all your add-ons keep working. Yeah? And within the next week, we are actually going to make it accessible to everyone. So now we get into the territory that is not going to be done next week. Now we're talking about the end of this year, and it's about virtual reality. So some of you perhaps have already seen this. This is what it looks like inside a virtual reality headset. What it does, it